Every so often we get this wonderful opportunity for me to show off the Aron HaKodesh, to show off our beautiful ark. I mean, I know it's always there, but sometimes the message of it is a little bit obscured, missed. The beautiful aesthetic simply blends into the background as one of the charming aspects of our sanctuary. But there is much that it is trying to say. So let's go back to where we are, because this is, well, can anybody, not you, Trip, can anyone else recognize this first word? Bereishit, in the beginning, or when God began to create, depending upon your conjugation of that particular grammatical construct. We are at the very, very beginning of the Torah, the book of Genesis, 1:1. But what is there to creation? Because it seems a little bit different than most of the other ancient creation myths. Bereishit bara Elohim, in the beginning when God began to created the heavens and the earth. All right, nice summary so far. But what do we find out about that creation as we come down to our favorite phrase, Haita tohu vavohu. Tohu vavohu. It's one of my favorite onomatopoeic Hebrew phrases. As one of my professors once put it, it basically could be translated as chaos shmeos. It's I believe the King James version is something like the world was formless and void, which is just about as good as chaos shmeos. The idea is that as we begin the unfolding of creation, we don't jump to the most famous line, Vayehi or, and there was light, but instead we have this intermediate step. These two little words that are thrown into the preamble to creation that often are skipped over. Often our retelling of the account of creation elides through this chaos, shmeos period and gets right down to all of the utterances that bring in the familiar world into its form. But if you miss that, then you're not only going to misunderstand the art of our Aron HaKodesh, but you're also going to misunderstand why we are learning about creation in the first place. Indeed, that is one of the first questions that the commentator Rashi even raises, of why are we bothering to learn this? Shouldn't the Torah have begun with the actual commandments, like, Passover, where the Jewish people really start getting the commandments fast and heavy? Why are we beginning with this philosophical preamble? Don't worry, he had an answer for that. But we have to think about these questions first. So, what do we learn from our Aron about the important role of this tohu vavohu, this chaos shmeos, into the structure of creation? Well, if you look up, you'll notice further you go, the higher you go on the Aron, those of you that are familiar with your Hebrew letters, that ain't Hebrew up there. Right? It's not that the artist couldn't reach and he was just, painting it crooked. Those aren't Hebrew letters. All the way up there near the Ner Tamid, near the eternal light, those letters are vaguely Hebrewish, kind of. If you squint, maybe you could imagine them being Hebrew letters. But really, they are not Hebrew. They are chaos. They are chaos. They are scribbles, deliberately created to have an echo of Hebrew in them because, of course, Hebrew would come from them, but designed to represent this tohu vavohu, this formlessness, this void. From it, as we come down, you'll see the letters begin to take on a coherent shape, but are still jumbled. Now we actually have the letters of the Aleph Bet, but they do not form any coherent words, let alone coherent sentences. Only once they come sweeping down into Bereishit, which itself is curved out of this mess of chaos, are we finally able to get to familiar territory. Bereishit bara Elohim, and in the beginning God created. We're all following the artistic motif? All right, good. What is it trying to tell us? Well, it's trying to tell us that in the natural state, the universe is chaotic. But that's the normal thing. I know we don't always feel that, give or take what the news says today, and give or take a hurricane now and then, but really, most of us actually rely upon the world being fairly ordered and predictable, and we come to take that as being its natural position. The story of creation, as written in the Torah itself and represented through the ark, is telling us it need not have been so. In fact, it is counter to what we know about the world, that the world should have order. Think about the structure of everything in the world, the basic building blocks of everything, the atoms, the molecules, the electrons, all those little bits that fly around. We may have learned in our 5th grade science class the little models of the electron orbiting the neutron and all of that good stuff. We may have learned about the different bonds between different atoms to create molecules, and the molecules creating proteins, and proteins creating life. And we may give the illusion that this is all natural, obvious, and inevitable, but those things break apart more often than they come together. The natural order of matter is to be broken, to be separate, to be disparate, to fall apart according to the laws of entropy. It takes effort to create order and structure out of the chaotic matter that is the fundamental structure of all of our existence. It takes an act of creation to make that which has been made into something that matters. It is not inevitable. God could have created just matter, could have just created all of the bits and pieces that are flying through the universe right now. All the gigawatts of energy just pumping throughout all of the stars, but not have created it in such a way that we would have stars. Not have created it in such a way that there would ever be a rising hierarchy of structure that would allow the creation of a thing like a planet, or a planet that would capture an atmosphere, or an atmosphere that would be supportive and conducive to life, and life that would be able to rise in ever more complicated structures rather than dissolving back into the goo that would eventually become sentient and spiritually aware. Those are all things that had to be planned into the universe. As we continue to peer out into the galaxies around us, as we look further and further back into time through the amazing inventions of our space telescopes and other forms of instruments, we are struck more and more that the universe actually seems to have order in it where it shouldn't. There are galaxies that are billions of years older, meaning they were formed closer to the Big Bang than we thought would be possible. It is almost as though order and structure was hardwired into creation. And that's surprising. It's surprising because it implies that there is something choosing that there be this order. Either we got supremely lucky, we walked up to the roulette wheel of all the universes that are possibly able to exist, someone spun that wheel, and our existence just happened out of all of the trillions of possible combinations to become able to even exist. Or else there was some form of structure within the warp and woof of the universe that allowed us to eventually materialize in the tapestry of creation. Now, I'm a rabbi, so obviously I'm on the it wasn't all just dumb luck side of the world. But that comes with certain consequences. As soon as you recognize the supreme impossibility, or at the very least improbability, that all of the world would be as beautifully perfect as it is, if all of the universe actually maintain its structure rather than move off into the direction that it most wants to do, which is just a gray mush of nothingness, to return to that primordial chaos, then you have to recognize that you have been given a gift. Because once you recognize that you won the lottery, you can't just say, well, I deserved it. You can't say, well, of course I won the lottery. I was destined to win the lottery. You have to say, I don't know how I got this lucky. I don't know how I got this fortunate, but I am absolutely going to appreciate it. I am going to make sure to feel grateful each and every day when I stand up and recognize that I am not flying off this rock hurtling through the universe, that I am not boiling away in the heat of our sun, that I am not being fried by cosmic radiation and am protected by all of the improbable things that keep us from being so. I'm actually going to appreciate that each and every day of my life. I'm going to recognize my life, my existence, my world as a miracle, not inevitable. The inevitability is chaos. The world is the miracle. The inevitability is death and decay. Life is the miracle. But we have to recognize that by recognizing that the top of this arc is where we should be. And yet at the bottom, the clear, beautiful, ordered instructions and guidance for life, and a life that is worth living, is where we happen to be. And that getting from the top to the bottom did not happen by chance. It happened by an act of creation. This is what we mean when we celebrate creation. We don't reread the story of creation each and every year just so that we can check God's diary of what God was doing on a particular Sunday. We are rereading the story of creation to understand why our life is so important, why it matters, why it is so significant, why it has meaning simply by existing. Because we are not accidents. We are not flukes. We have been granted a gift. And it is up to us to make the most of that gift. Begin by appreciating it, by showing gratitude. Continue by finding your own place, your own meaning, recognizing that you are meant to be here in this wonderful world. And follow it up by protecting those around you as they continue their travel, and protecting the world, this precious jewel, this fragile, fragile ship that we live upon, so that it too will continue to provide the glorious life that is available to all. Shabbat Shalom.